right. Hello, world. DB here, live from 2K. And of course, here with the big, bad Mafia 3 booth that's just outside of this room here. But for right now, we're going to get into some Q&A with the Hangar 13 studio head, Haden Blackman. Haden Blackman, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So hello to all those of you in the chat. We actually stepped up our game today. I'm not going to be looking at my phone during the live stream. We're going to be looking at a live list of your questions, your comments, and things like that in the chat. So hello, welcome to all of you all over the world, and those of you here in California as well that might be at the show and checking us out as well. E3 so far has been a blast. The booth here is just absolutely impressive. If you have a chance to stop by, get down here as soon as possible. You can't miss it. We're in the South Hall, and it's quite a sight. As I mentioned yesterday, we're going to be doing some live tours of some of the things that we have going on here at the booth. We did a live booth tour yesterday. You can see the archive of that here on our Facebook page. We're going to be doing a tour today of the inner workings of the Mafia area of the booth, which is basically a recreation of a block of the French Ward in New Bordeaux. So there's a live band, there's tarot card readers, there are palm readers, and all kinds of really cool stuff going on in that area. We're going to cover that later today, but definitely check that stuff out when you get a chance. But in the meantime here, let's get into some Q&A here with Haden Blackman. And let's get going. So we covered some stuff yesterday that were some hot topics that were in the chat here. So let's go ahead and answer some questions here. Let's see here. Is Joe in the E3 trailer? That's a pretty easy one to answer.
Is he in the E3 trailer? I think that if people look really closely at the E3 trailer, they might find a couple hidden Easter eggs.
All right. Well, there you go. Very cool stuff. Starting off the Q&A here. Go frame by frame and check out for those Easter eggs there. Let's see here. Okay, this is a great question. So, Vito, what is his role?
So, Vito Scaletta was the main character in Mafia 2, I think, as most of you probably know. In the time between Mafia 2 and Mafia 3, he's been sent down to New Bordeaux. And has been kind of sidelined by the mob boss there, a guy named Sal Marcano. Early in the game, Vito's working with the rest of the Italian mob to plan a big heist that Lincoln gets involved with. But once the Italian mob betrays Lincoln and his kind of surrogate family, Vito gets sidelined even further and then gets recruited by Lincoln to become one of his underbosses.
Very cool stuff. Hello from the Czech Republic in the chat there. Hello back to the Czech Republic. We have a great crew at Hangar 13 that you can attest to, and we have some really amazing people from the Czech Republic there as well. You want to talk about that a little bit as well? Is that they're working on this game and what we're doing there?
Yeah, so 2K Czech is still very much working on Mafia 3. We've got a large contingent of artists from 2K Czech, still in the Czech Republic working on the game. Our media team, who they do most of the cinematics, they're working on the game out of the Czech Republic. We've got a handful of engineers out there. But we also brought a large contingent of the 2K Czech studio over to Hangar 13 to be part of Hangar 13 and work on the game from Novato. So we've got engineers, designers, artists, all of whom worked on Mafia 2, working on Mafia 3 again.
Excellent. Very cool. Very cool. All right, so let's see. What else do we have here? A question about, we get this all the time, so we might as well nip it in the bud here. Is there a feature of having gasoline in the cars in Mafia 3 and like filling them up in the gas station?
There's actually not. We looked at trying to take the driving model from Mafia 2, which is fantastic, that kind of physics-based driving model, and expanding upon that and making sure that it was accessible and it was fun to drive, but that it still supported, again, that kind of very different feeling when you're using a physics-based driving model. But then we took out some stuff that was either frustrating or that players didn't notice as much from Mafia 2. I didn't know this until somebody on the team pointed out that the top speed of your car was affected by how much gas was in your tank, right? So there are things like that in order to kind of streamline it and allow us to spend more time focusing on the handling of a wider variety of cars.
Very cool. Hello from, looks like Australia there. Hello, Australia. Let's see here. What else do we have, Ibs? What else do we have? I think this is something you alluded to previously, but if you can you tell us a little bit about the police mechanic in the game, as far as like if you get into some trouble?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, the police, I think, in Mafia 3 are no joke. If you actually stand your ground and try and fight them, that's most of the time a losing proposition for the player and for Lincoln. But the way the system works is if police or civilians, if civilians see you committing a crime, they'll try and run to the nearest payphone, calling the cops, who will then show up to the area where the crime was committed and start searching for you. If they spot you in the area, then they initiate, kind of a chase and trying to hunt you down and kill you. If they see you commit a crime, then it kind of escalates immediately, and the size of their search area for you expands depending on the number of kind of offenses and crimes that you commit, or the types of crimes, right? So if you open fire and start destroying a ton of stuff around you, that search area is going to get much larger and much harder to escape. The cool thing, though, the thing I'm most excited about is that by recruiting a guy named Thomas Burke, who's one of your underbosses, if you give him enough territory, he gives you access to a police dispatcher that will allow you to call off the cops and kind of allow you to control the police as a separate system in the game.
Very cool stuff. So I have a question for you. You're the studio head at Hangar 13. What does that mean exactly? You want to tell us a little bit about like a day in the life of Haden Blackman?
Yeah. The cool thing is that no 2 days are alike, right? So there's always something new and different going on. But yeah, in my role, I'm responsible for setting kind of the tone for the studio, starting to establish the culture, which again is still evolving as we finish up this game, making sure broadly that we're on budget, we're on schedule, and that the game is of high quality. I'm very involved in the creative process, so I manage a lot of the our design director and our lead writer, our art director, all kind of report up into me as well. But yeah, a lot of it is just solving problems day to day, and sometimes it's, hey, we've got an issue with this mechanic in the game, how can we make it better, all the way to like, we don't have enough places for people to sit.
Sure. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you.
Someone was asking if there's
Yep.
a kick-ass soundtrack in Mafia 3 like Mafia 2.
Like music in the car? What?
In the game. It's got a kick-ass soundtrack.
Oh, a kick-ass soundtrack. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. So one of the best parts about working on this game is that the soundtrack. It's game set in 1968, so we're able to pull music from all the basically the entire 60s, and we've got everything from kind of swamp rock and hard rock to jazz and blues and R&B and soul, and it's just it's this crush of music, which is so amazing. Some of the stuff that we've already kind of released, things like Painted Black from the Rolling Stones. We've got several Creedence tracks. There's a bunch of kind of hidden gems in there that some blues stuff that I think people are going to find really engaging as they're driving around the world. So it's cool.
Very cool stuff. All right, we got a question here coming at you. Let's see. Okay. So going into vehicles and car customization, the chat is saying that they hear that the game detects the temperature of each tire individually, which affects the audio.
Yeah, so this is one of these crazy awesome stories. So our audio director, a guy named Matt Bauer, went out and recorded the tire sounds, and I can't really talk exactly about how he did that, but he was able to get these really clear sounds of the tires. And at one point he was like, there must be something wrong with my equipment because the sound of the tire is changing really dramatically. And what he realized is that once the tire hits a certain temperature, it does, because it expands, the sound of the squeals and stuff does change really dramatically, right? So he was talking to one of our designers, a guy named Andy Nikosic, who worked on Mafia 2 and is working on Mafia 3 with us. And he was telling him this story, and Andy was like, well, we absolutely can detect the temperature of the tires for each individual tire if you want. So we have that in the game. So it's just, again, the system is so complex in a good way, and it's got all these little levers that we can pull. That of course, we were able to detect the temperature on the 4 tires, and and I don't know if anybody except the hardcore audio guys will ever notice it, but it's kind of cool that it's there.
That is very cool. So you were on the IGN live show on Sunday. Very cool show. If you guys missed that, I don't know what you were doing, but you can go back to our Facebook page and you can watch that. We have the trailer from that. We also have the gameplay from the IGN live show available to watch on our YouTube channel and also on Facebook as well. You can check all that content out. So I'm seeing some questions about the areas in the game, the map in the game, and stuff like that. You alluded to the districts, describe some of the districts and what goes on there. Can you tell us just a little bit more about the different areas of New Bordeaux and what that means for the player, what that means for the story?
Sure, yeah. So the city's divided up into 10 districts. There's kind of 9 city districts, and then the Bayou, which kind of has its own unique role in the game. But Lincoln's goal in the game for much of the game is taking down the Italian mob and taking over the city. So he kind of works district by district to take down the mob, and he does that by attacking their various criminal rackets. And what I'm excited about is that each district has its own kind of unique criminal ecology and rackets kind of that fits that district. So we've got Delray Hollow, which is the area of town where Lincoln and his surrogate family lived before they're betrayed by the mob. The rackets that kind of spring up there once the Italian mob takes it over are, they're pushing heroin, they're doing prostitution out of that district. So Lincoln goes in and busts those things up and actually takes them over. But then you got kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Way up in the north of the city is what we call Frisco Fields, which is big mansions and has a university and all this other stuff. And there the mob is partnering with this group called the Southern Union, which is really racist, and they're doing some really kind of scary things underneath the surface, which I don't want to reveal because it's kind of a neat story reveal. But they're also cooking PCP out of the local university's kind of chemistry lab, which has been funded by the Italian mob, and so while it's under construction, they're cooking PCP there. So hopefully the players will find that interesting. That as they explore, they discover all these rackets, and we're doing a lot to tell a lot of story just around that.
Very cool. We have a question. Can you drive boats in the game?
You absolutely can drive boats in the game. I don't think we could have a game set in our version of New Orleans with the river and the bayou without boats, and you can drive fan boats too. That's a common question we get asked.
Oh, that's very cool. I'm excited for that. I like fan boats. All right, let's see what we got here. How much more time do we have, Ibs?
We've got about 10 minutes.
Okay. All right, so we've got another question coming in here. Looks like it was pulled from the chat here. So which movies inspired Mafia 3?
A ton. So it was really interesting when we started working on this because we wanted the tone of the game to be a little bit different than the last one. So, Mafia 2 is a very romanticized look at the mob, which is perfect for the time period that game was set in. And so, again, I think they drew a lot of inspiration from movies like The Godfather, maybe the beginning of Goodfellas, where the mob was still kind of seen in its heyday and its prime. For us, because we're set in the late 60s, it's kind of the end of the golden era of the Italian mob. And so we looked at movies like the second half of Goodfellas, for example, where you see that kind of it fraying and falling apart. But we also looked at a lot of documentaries. So there's a documentary called Cocaine Cowboys, which takes place focuses on the 70s, but and was all about the rise of the cocaine trade in Miami. But just the way that they told that story and the impact of the cocaine trade on Miami, we found fascinating. So we took a lot of that as inspiration for Mafia 3.
Okay, very cool. We have another question. This one's about the sit-down. So we saw some of the sit-downs on the IGN live show, really for the first time outside of 2K Hangar 13. And in that sit-down, this character Burke, who we finally hear actually talking and stuff, so that was really cool. I actually got some pretty excited hits on Twitter and Facebook where people were like, we heard Cassandra and Burke talk for the first time. This is really cool. Burke got a little upset.
Yeah, Burke gets a little upset in that particular sit-down. So what sit-downs are in the game, they're an opportunity for Lincoln and the player to assign out the various districts to the underbosses. And when they meet, they all kind of give their pitch, and it's, why they think that they should run that district, and they play on Lincoln's emotions a little bit, or the player's emotions, but then they also offer stuff, right? And so we're trying to like have the player kind of be torn between greed and loyalty throughout the game. But based on the choices you make, you absolutely can get betrayed by one or more of your underbosses. And then that forces Lincoln and the player to go deal with that situation. And the sit down we're showing here. The player in that playthrough, the player gave a whole bunch of territory to Cassandra, but ignored Burke, and that he'll only put up with that for so long.
Yeah, sure. And I had one comment that I really enjoyed talking with this particular person about. This person was like, I am giving absolutely everything to Vito. Yeah. And I responded with, well, what if, someone else makes you an offer you can't refuse? Yeah. And he's like, yeah, good point. So once you start thinking about all the possibilities and then seeing, I think some people's favorite line in that entire sit down is where Burke is like, I don't, to paraphrase, is like, I don't care about rocket launchers. Basically, like, I don't care what they have to offer you. Yeah. Like, you need to give this to me, kind of thing. And then so you start thinking about, rocket launchers. Like, what other kind of really sweet toys might I be passing up, right? So, all right, cool. We had let's see, what else do we have on here? We did have a question about Playboy collectibles. Playboy collectibles are returning in the game, so those will be back in. We announced that fairly recently, and there will be more information very soon with more details on those as well, which is very cool. Yeah. All right. The release date of Mafia 3, that's an easy question.
October 7th.
All right. October 7th, 2016, PlayStation 4, PC, and Xbox One. Let's see. Oh, Ibs, you're getting a shout out from Natalie there. What's up, Ibs? All right. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so we addressed this yesterday. We talked about some of the loose ends with Andy. And so without giving too much details, because I know this is something that we're keeping close, not because we don't want to satisfy the wants and needs of our fans, but we don't want to spoil the rich narrative that you're going to be experiencing in Mafia 3. So we know there's some loose ends. Everybody's favorite loose end is Joe, but let's just say in Mafia 3. I guess the question is, are we going to have some of these loose ends tied up?
Absolutely, and I think I've said earlier in the show that if you are a fan of Mafia 2 and you're wondering what happened to Joe, if you play the game and you spend time doing some stuff with Vito and for Vito and you play through the game, you definitely will have your questions about Joe answered. It might raise new questions, but sure. Some of your questions will definitely get answered.
Well, we can get to the new questions when we get to them. So there you go, everybody asking about Joe. Your questions will be answered when you play Mafia 3. So let's see here. What else we got? So we had a good question yesterday, and it was about basically this. We saw in the IGN live show in the gameplay there that there's some variations to how Lincoln goes about his combat when he gets into like the nitty gritty combat. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, on the kind of broad spectrum, we've got full support for what we call stalking in the game. Lincoln's never going to be a ghost and kind of go through a whole mission or area without taking out anybody, but you definitely can stalk your enemies and kind of take them out one by one as you go through the game. And we see players doing that for huge swaths of the game. But then you can also do the other extreme, which is going guns blazing. Most players seem to have the most fun and are the most effective when they kind of switch up the two, depending on what weapons they have available and what the specific situation is. But then when you get into like kind of the nitty gritty of it, Lincoln's got dozens and dozens of different takedowns. We've got lethal and non-lethal. We've got stealth and kind of non-stealth, I guess, takedowns. A lot of them vary based on the weapon that you have on hand. You get the ability eventually to do brutal takedowns, which are takedowns that will stun enemies around you. And then Lincoln's arsenal, again, is one of the things that you can upgrade over time, and you can get everything from silenced pistols to sniper rifles to a big giant machine gun to rocket launcher and grenade launcher. So, we're not shying away from any of that either.
Very cool. So they are loving your shirt. Yeah, they're loving your shirt in the chat. So
saw that anywhere.
yeah, no, it was up there. It was there. It was there. Yeah. Okay, we got time for one more question.
I thought that wasn't the question.
All right, let's see here. What do we got? What do we got?
Questions about free roam.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about exploring New Bordeaux.
Sure. So when we first started working on the project, we knew we didn't want to lose what was so special about Mafia 2, which is the strong narrative and the strong sense of time and place. But at the same time, we want to give people more to do in the open world, but really in a way that propels the story forward, right? So Lincoln's on a mission. He doesn't spend a lot of time going out and kind of doing side things that don't either further his mission to tear down the mob or build up his own kind of criminal empire. So in that, again, you'll be busting up rackets. You can do those lots of different ways. You can decide how you want to bust up the racket and approach it. The other things you can do are things like weed runs for Cassandra, smuggling runs for Vito, things like that help those guys build up their kind of piece of the criminal empire too.
Okay, very cool. And we have one last question coming in. Is there any content we get from pre-ordering? Yes, indeedly doodly. You get the family kickback pack, and you can find more information on that on our Mafia game websites, mafiagame.com, and then click on the pre-order tab there in the little hamburger menu, drop down. You'll see all about that pre-order information there. And also, if you pre-order specifically on the consoles, each console is offering some pretty cool stuff. On Xbox One, it's some avatar things. And then on the PS4, you can actually get this really sweet theme for your background on your PS4. So definitely check that out. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us here at E3. Thank you so much, Haden.
Thank you.
We will be back more this week with more Q&A, more live streams from the booth, as I mentioned before, and a lot more content coming at you from our social media on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you so much for hanging out, and we will see you next time.